Hey everyone, welcome! Today, we're going to take a snapshot of our world by looking at three really fascinating and, believe me, seemingly unrelated stories. A new global tech competition, a hidden world of tiny creatures, and a crisis facing one of the world's most iconic trees. So what on earth could semiconductors, spiders, and coconuts possibly have in common? I know, it sounds like the start of a really weird joke, right? But the answer actually gets at a powerful idea about how we can approach some of the world's biggest challenges. So let's start with the tech. We're going to kick things off at the highest level. We're talking geopolitics. A new global competition is really heating up, and this one's being fought with silicon chips and rare minerals. It's creating what people are starting to call the Great Tech Divide. And right at the heart of this is a new US-led initiative called Pax Silica. The name itself literally means peace through silicon. And its whole goal is to create secure, trusted supply chains for the technologies that are going to define our future. You know, things like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and all those rare earth elements you need to build them. This really breaks down the two competing game plans perfectly. On one side, you've got China's strategy, which involves using what are called coercive export controls, basically using their control over key materials as a massive bargaining chip. And on the other side, you have Pax Silica's response, which is to unite a bunch of nations to pool their technology, their minerals, and their money. The goal? To build entirely new supply chains that are free from that kind of influence. Basically, we're watching two distinct tech blocks form right before our eyes. So where does a huge player like India fit into all this? Well, it's complicated. India brings some massive strengths to the table. A huge AI market, incredible digital infrastructure, and a seriously deep talent pool. But it's also fiercely protective of its own strategic independence. For India, it's not really about picking a team in some new tech Cold War. It's about making sure it has the freedom to carve its own path. An invitation to join is probably on the way, but you can bet that independent streak is going to define its role. Okay, so from the massive global stage, let's do a complete 180 and zoom way in, all the way down to a single, vibrant ecosystem. We're heading to Kaziranga National Park to see how just shifting our focus is revealing a world of tiny giants that have been overlooked for way too long. Now, when you think of Kaziranga, you probably picture this, right? The magnificent one-horned rhino. I mean, the park is a critical sanctuary for over 2,600 of them. That's the largest population on the entire planet. And it's not just rhinos. It's famous for the Big Five. And it has the third highest tiger density in the world. It's an absolute paradise for megafauna. But, believe it or not, that is not the whole story. Because a recent survey did something different. It shifted its focus from the big and famous to the small and overlooked. And the result? They discovered 283 species of insects and spiders that had never been recorded in the park before. 283! It's just a stunning reminder of all the biodiversity that's hidden, like right under our noses. And when you look closer, the sheer variety of this hidden world is, well, it's incredible. We're talking about a huge range of creatures. Butterflies and moths make up the biggest chunk, but you've also got ants, bees, wasps, beetles. This isn't just some list of new bugs. It's a complex, thriving community that we're just now starting to appreciate. Okay, so why should we care about all these little guys? Because these tiny creatures are basically the engineers of the entire ecosystem. They're the ones pollinating the plants, keeping the soil healthy, acting as natural pest control, and they form the absolute base of the food web that supports everything else, yep, including those famous rhinos and tigers. And here's why this is so important right now. This discovery comes at a really critical time. Globally, we're facing a pretty alarming reality. Nearly 40% of all insect species are in decline. So that makes protecting the hidden tiny life in places like Kaziranga, well, it's not just an act of conservation anymore. It's really an act of survival for the entire ecosystem. All right, for our last story, we're going to pivot from an ecosystem that's secretly thriving to one that's in a full-blown crisis. We're going to look at how a devastating disease is affecting coconut palms and how a totally new approach might finally offer a solution to this very old problem. So the problem here is something called root wilt disease. It's caused by this nasty little organism, and it's affecting over 3 million, that's 30 lakh coconut palms. And the worst part? There is no known cure. So why haven't we been able to stop it? Well, it turns out the traditional scientific approach has just kind of hit a wall. There's no cure, and by the time the symptoms show up, it's usually way too late. And on top of that, there's a massive shortage of resistant seedlings to replace the sick trees, especially now that climate stress and new pests are making the whole thing spread even faster. This is where that change in perspective comes in. The proposed solution is a shift towards something called participatory science. So instead of just staying cooped up in a lab, the idea is to get out there, into the heavily infected areas, and find the trees that have naturally survived the disease. Then you use their genetic material to systematically breed new, tolerant varieties. It's basically about partnering with nature's own resilience. Pretty brilliant, right? And all of this brings us back to our final thought, which is really the thread that connects all three of these stories. It's all about the incredible power of a fresh perspective. Think about it. Whether we're talking about building new global alliances like Pax Silica to create new supply chains, or looking way closer at the ground beneath our feet to really understand an ecosystem, or even teaming up with local survivors to fight a plant disease, the big breakthrough doesn't always come from some brand new gadget. Sometimes it's just about looking at the problem in a totally new way. So that leaves me with one last question for you to chew on. Where else in our world could a fresh perspective or a totally unexpected partnership be the key to solving a problem that we've all thought for a long time was completely unsolvable? Thanks for hanging out with me today.